Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Professor Ming's Strategic Insights. The topic I'm going to share with you today is a rather hot one. From the 15th through the 18th, the Chinese Communist Party, they just held their third plenum of the 20th Party Congress. After the Party Congress, they held an international press conference. They issued an official communique and a number of articles. But after watching the press conference and reading all the materials, I guess both the international observers and the domestic observers are very disappointed. I guess the results of plenum do not meet the anticipation of the observers. Before explaining this disappointment, I have to explain a little bit about the structure and the meetings of the Chinese Communist Party, the CCP. For the Chinese Communist Party, they hold a party congress, the National Party Congress, every 5 years. And in between this span of 5 years, they regularly hold 7 plenums or 7 plenary sessions. The first, the second, third, and all the way to the 7th. For each plenum, there's a specific agenda. For instance, the first plenum, which is usually held right after the party congress, and its main agenda is to deal with the personnel shuffling. In each of these party congresses, there are about 2,000 representatives all over the country. And all of these 2,000 people, they supposedly elect a body, which is called the Central Committee, consisting of 200 people. And all of these 200 people, they supposedly elect a 25-member Politburo. Now there are only 24 people this time. And all of these 25 people or 24 people, they supposedly elect a standing committee of the Politburo, which ranges anywhere from 7 to 9 people. This time it's 7. And all of this 7 people body, they elect the general secretary. Now it's Xi Jinping. So that's the main agenda for the first plenum. The second plenum convenes the next year, usually in early next year, somewhere between late January to middle of February. The main agenda for the second plenum is to elect the President of the Republic, the People's Republic, of course, and Premier, and the cabinet members, and so on and so forth. And the third plenum is usually held toward the end of the second year, the same year as the second plenum. The main agenda for the third plenum is very important. Basically, it deals with economic issues. What kind of economic policies they're going to propose this time, what kind of reform they're going to have, what kind of important policy change they're going to announce are usually proposed in this third plenum. That's why it is important. And then we'll see the 4th, 5th, and all the way down to the 7th plenum for each year. The reason people attach so much importance to this third plenum, in fact, there are historical reasons for people to attach so much importance to this third plenum. Back in 1978, about 46 years ago, the CPC or the CCP, the Chinese Communist Party, held their third plenum of the 11th Party Congress, which was presided by Deng Xiaoping, the strong man. In this third plenum, Deng Xiaoping proposed economic reforms and opening up toward the outside world. And there's a strong reason for him to propose that. Back in the 1950s, to be exact, 1958, when Mao Zedong was still in power, Mao Zedong launched his so-called Great Leap Forward movement. Great Leap Forward for industrial output and for agricultural production. Associated with these policies was the notorious People's Commune policy. Let me make the story short. Mao's policies were very radical, very left-leaning, and these left-leaning policies then eventually led to the Great Famine and the unprecedented death in human history. It is estimated at least 40 million people died of hunger in this Great Famine. And needless to say, Mao lost part of the power, but Mao resented it. So in order to get his power back, or in order to regain his power, he launched a movement called the Great Cultural Revolution. Although the name is Cultural Revolution, it is actually a power struggle, a very fierce power struggle. And the Cultural Revolution lasted about 10 years, actually more than 10, about 12 years. It did not come to a conclusion until Mao died in 1976. After Mao Zedong's death, there were a whole series of political struggle, the power struggle among the political elite, until Deng Xiaoping returned to power after his third purge in 1977. Then let's go back to 1978, the third plenum of the 11th Party Congress. As we suggested, Deng Xiaoping proposed his reform and opening up policy by that year. There are two main aspects in Deng Xiaoping's reform. The first one is about the agricultural sector. He relaxes part of the radical policies associated with Mao Zedong's People's Commune policy, and he introduced what we called the responsibility system to the countryside. So in short, peasants got more money out of their labor. There's a very good and very strong incentive for the peasants to work. And the second aspect is the opening up to the outside world. It tried to attract more money or capital from the outside world, more firms or companies, and even more talents from outside China. So in short, the essence of Deng Xiaoping's reforms is to reduce the restrictions or the control upon the economy. So that in turn explains why the economies of the communist countries were not successful. First, because they tried to command the economy by politics. That's what we call command economy. And secondly, instead of in pursuit of profit or interest, they put an emphasis on political control or political orientation of economic development. And thirdly is the deprivation of private property or private ownership. And lastly, thereby, it's a deprivation of what we call work incentive or production incentive. In short, people don't want to work because they don't get enough pay. That's why most of the economies of former communist countries did not work. So that's why Deng Xiaoping's reform, beginning in 1978, were so successful. First, it tried to reduce or tried to decrease the control of politics over the economy. Secondly, it provided better work incentive by giving more money or offering more payment to the peasants, to the workers, and to officials. And as for opening up to the outside world, it first opened up to Hong Kong, then to Taiwan, then to international world, mostly the Western countries, the more advanced countries, United States, European countries, Japan, Canada, Australia, and New Zealand. By 1978, as China was kind of backward, so the opening up policy brought to China a lot of good things, money or capital, most needed by China, techniques, technologies, foreign talents, and new ideas and new concepts and new ways of doing things, and some modest change in laws and also in institutions. So Deng Xiaoping's reform have brought some encouraging results to China. So China has gradually transformed itself into the so-called world factory and a production center for the world. And it has become a world market. It witnessed a huge increase in its national GDP, and the state revenue rise rapidly. Namely, the country collects a lot more tax. The country is much wealthier, has much more money to spend, and the Chinese citizens or nationals, their consuming capabilities increase sharply. So for many years, we see Chinese people went abroad to buy luxury things, gold, jewelries, diamonds, hotels, resorts, or even football clubs. And inevitably comes along heavy corruption of the officials. Officials inside the party, officials inside the government, and even the generals of the PLA, People's Liberation Army. So let's return to the third plenum of this 20th Party Congress. Why are people attached so much importance to this third plenum? Because China's economy had been staggering for a period of time. For China's economy had been staggering for many years. There are two disadvantageous factors affecting China's economic development in past years. The first one is the rising costs. After China's economy has been developing for so many years, the costs of many things have risen. The price of the land, the price of the work of the labor, namely salary or wage, the price of facilities, water, electricity, transportation, and even raw materials. The second shortcoming associated with China's economy is because it lacks the vital technologies needed for further development. For instance, good and powerful engine. On top of the two disadvantageous factors associated with the Xi Jinping's administration has made four major mistakes in dealing with China's economy. The first one is the repossession of Hong Kong. Not only it ruins the one country, two system policy, as China promised for 50 years, it caused a great outflow of foreign businesses, foreign capital, foreign and local talents, and even local labor. The second mistake has to do with the very strict and very stringent quarantine in dealing with the COVID-19, beginning in late 2019. The very strict quarantine policy lasted for 3 years, and it basically suffocates the local businesses, and they haven't got a chance to recover until today. The third mistake has to do with the promotion and subsidy for the state-owned enterprises, as we call it, the SOE. Meanwhile, the government suppresses the privately owned businesses, SPOB. The last mistake is, of course, the trade war with the United States. So why is this third plenum so disappointing to international observers? As I suggested, by reading the communique and the associated articles, and after watching the press conference, we all came to the conclusion there are no real reforms in this third plenum. In this communique, we can read many slogans, such as how to construct a high-level socialist market economic system, how to build a unified national market, how to improve the basic structure of market economy, and how to improve on the taxation, financial measures, and so on and so forth. We see slogans after slogans, but no real measures. And even common sense can tell us the reforms China needs now is to reduce the restrictions or control of politics over economy, to provide better and stronger work incentive, namely make people get more money or allowing people to get more money. And lastly, a real opening up to the outside world to attract more money, capital, businesses, talents, and services. But after reading the communique and watching the press conference, what we see is that instead of relaxing the restrictions and control of politics over economy, they go the other way. They strengthen the control of politics over economy. There are patches of policy, of economic policy, of financial policy, of social welfare policies, but no structural or directional change. So it runs contrary, the opposite way, so it runs contrary to the basic economic laws. So in short, there are no real reforms in this third plenum. And what we see for the future of China's economy is as a spiral down movement. The Chinese economy will be delinked or decoupled from the world economy. It will be isolated and even antagonistic to the rest of the world. I'm sorry that I'm unable to give you a rosy picture of the future of China's economy. It's a rather gloomy one, but that's basically what we read and what we see in the communique and in the articles and in the propaganda they offer. So in conclusion, the future of China's economy will be spiraling down. It will be decoupled, delinked, isolated, and at worst, be targeted at by international community. I'm sorry to say this, but unfortunately, this is what we read out of the communique of the third plenum of the 20th Congress of the CPC's Party Congress. So that's all for today, and I'll see you next time.